Okay, welcome everyone to NewGenP's first webinar of 2021. My name is Peter Monkhouse and I'll be hosting this webinar along with my colleague Joanna Tivik. So as I mentioned, we'd like to thank you for joining this webinar, the first one for this new year, although we're still in COVID lockdown and doing a lot of things virtually. We do have, Joanna and I have been working hard over the holidays to plan an exciting year of events for you. We'll talk more about the webinars that we have planned at the end of this webinar, so stay tuned for that. And we've got some blogs coming up and other things that hopefully will be interesting and help you understand the importance that product ownership plays in today's organizations. The webinar is being recorded, as I mentioned, and that will be posted up on YouTube. You'll get an email link later on today or tomorrow morning with the link to the YouTube. Please feel free to share it to your friends and colleagues. Also, if you have any questions, please make sure you ask as we go along. Our guests have some interactive things that they'll ask you to participate in as we go through this session. So enough of the introductory remarks from me. I'm going to now turn it over to Joanna to talk about our presentation, our webinar for today, which I'm really excited to be participating in. So Joanna, over to you.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you everybody for joining us. As Peter said, with the first one, we have so much in store for you. And we thought we should start with observation skills for virtual teams because this is such an applicable topic these days. We all work in virtual teams. We were just chatting a little bit at the beginning. Laura is a veteran. Thank you so much for joining us in this. So today we have Savita and Mark. They are certified coaches. We have a little bit of introduction for them. We can go to the next slide. You can see here that they've been working with various organizations to train their teams, to make them high performant, to coach the teams. And especially these times when we have the virtual teams, these skills, the observation skills are so important. It will be interesting to recap at the end some of the observation skills we learned here in this virtual webinar. So both Savita and Mark have been engaged in various speaking events, and I am really happy to have them here and also to thank them for participating in these events because it's not easy. It takes a while to prepare and then come here and talk about these topics. So thank you so much for giving out your time and volunteering your time. So with that, I would like to pass it on to Mark now to kick us off on this important topic.
All right, thanks, Johanna. And thanks, Peter, for having us here. Let me get the screen share going. So as Johanna mentioned, we'll be talking about observation skills for virtual teams. And we'll be presenting some concepts, but we really want to bring you into some of the concepts. So that's where some of the activities will come into play. So in some cases, we'll ask for a few volunteers. In other cases, we'll need everybody to participate. Okay. So as Johanna mentioned, we've been speaking a lot on this, but I want to emphasize that actually Savita and I have been speaking and writing about remote teams well before the pandemic. So we have been in the remote trenches for quite a long time. As you see there in my bio, I put out a book in early 2019 with Johanna Rothman, and I know Savita has her own publications, but you can also see some contact information there, which I think will be shared out later. But at this point, I want to turn it over to Savita, who has some very interesting exercises for you.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you, everyone. It's good to see you all here. Just a little bit of background. I just want to make the differentiation based on my own experience. Before COVID, I was working with a lot of distributed teams. But the difference was that I had at least few people in person in the office and rest virtual. Now, since last year, we all are virtual. So nobody is sharing the same workspace. So it makes a little bit more complicated or different than the previous scenarios. So I started thinking, being product owners or being agile team members, we observe each other's behaviors a lot and understand and inference a lot of information and drive the improvement from there. Now our all interaction with other team members, our customers, our stakeholders, everything is happening just by the phone calls or video calls or sometimes via chat. So all of our senses, which contributes to the observation, listening became so much prevalent because most of our conversation, we can use our listening skills a lot. So we'll talk about listening a little bit here. So I would like to ask, what do you understand about listening? What is your definition? So you may write it on the Zoom chat. Few words or sentence about listening. Okay, so I got active listening, trying to understand others, receive information and interpret, hearing what the person is saying, receiving data to process information, not making conclusions. That's an interesting one. So I think all of you got almost right what listening is, but how I define listening is it's just not hearing. It's to attentively hear what the speaker is saying, then repeat it, reflect it back to the speaker, close the loop to understand whether your message, what you got from the speaker, is right. Okay, so until unless you get this feedback back to yourself about what you listen, it's kind of creates some miscommunication or misunderstanding. So how to make our listening more, which is very popular word is like active listening, is that you have to reflect back to the speaker. And how you can do it, here in the picture you may see that product owner is having a discussion with few customers, talking about the problem, about the current solution of the product. So while having this conversation, if product owner listens properly, then product owner might say that, hey, I heard the problem with current solution is ... So you repeat the feedback of the customers right there and then, so that you capture the essence correctly before you go back to your team and take the insights and create the new backlog items. So you can solve a lot of problems which could happen because of the miscommunication while working virtually by just reflecting back. Okay. So let's do a little bit of exercise to see how listening looks like, active listening looks like in action. So for this, I would request 3 volunteers. You may turn on your video or not, because it's mostly about listening. So what you are going to do, these 3 volunteers, you will get 2 minutes, total 2 minutes, and you just have a normal conversation about your favorite product. Okay, so you 3 people, we would like to hear from all of you and have a conversation about your favorite product. Rest of us, we just listen and then we'll debrief about our listening. Okay. So who wants to volunteer? It's a very simple task.
We need some talkative people. Let's see who. Well, I can talk a lot.
Thank you, Joanna.
I can also volunteer. I'm Indira Akula.
Hi, Indra.
Hi,
Thank
Indira.
you.
Hi.
Can I have one more volunteer?
Or two, and I can give up my place.
Yes.
We want our attendees to get the benefit of this session.
Sure, I can. I'm happy to talk.
Jill, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Quickly. Okay, if nobody wants to do it, I'll do it.
Okay, so we got Joanna, Indra, and Joe. So everyone just properly listen. And all the three volunteers, thank you so much for volunteering. I will give you 2 minutes. Have a normal conversation about your favorite product.
At the
Keeping
same
the
time,
time.
or?
Yes, at the same time.
Oh, okay.
2 minutes in total.
Okay. No listening, just talking.
Other people are listening.
Okay.
So just like a conscious stream of what my favorite product is, as
My
opposed
favorite product is about Amazon. We don't stop, right, when the others are talking.
You can all talk at the same time.
We can talk at the same time?
Hi, Savita. Could you give us a start and a stop, if you don't mind?
Yes. So
Thank
it's 12:14. You may start now, and I will write on the chat. Okay, your time starts now.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll start. My favorite product
Hi,
is
everyone. My product-
Amazon.
my
Like I
favorite
really
product
like to
is
shop on
Chicken
Amazon
pot.
and
The reason why I
experience
like
their
it is
online
because it just makes the cooking
experience
process
and
very
how they
fast
actually
and
treat
energetic.
their
All the
customers.
dishes that you like, and it actually
have,
you can also cook
all
like dried
their
beans in
the
that, which I
comments. You
find
can
really
the first thing that
interesting, as
I
well as
check
it
is going
serves all
to
the
their
nutrition.
comments and their reviews.
So
If
my
the
cooking
product is actually
has really revamped
good
with this
for
product,
use.
which I absolutely love.
Sometimes I
Also do
ask
slow
for
cooking. You
references
can also
from
do
friends.
pressure
So
cooking.
I do like
maybe
their
also
experience
cook your
overall.
pork ribs,
So
which
the
usually
fact that
takes
they
like a couple of
have
hours in an oven. So this is an
very
interesting
easy
product, and
way
I highly
to
recommend
interact with
it
their
for
platform
anybody
and
who
buy, and
enjoys
then I
good home
definitely
cooked
like the
meal
fact
or
that
are
you
in a
can
rush.
keep
I mean,
their
going to
products to
any
my door,
grocery
and I
store,
can
you're bound
get
to
it
spend like a $20 for just one
when I
single
want
meal.
it, and I can
Whereas with
follow
Instant
where
Pot, you can get
my
all the
product
groceries you
is,
want
and
for $20 and maybe make a couple of meals.
I can see
put
the
it in
entire
Instant Pot
itinerary of the
fridge.
product and when
This
it will arrive at my
has been a
door, and
genius
then when
product
it was
that I
delivered. And
think
then also I
is
like the fact
one
that
of
I can
the best products that
if
have
I
been
don't like it, I
in a
can
couple of
return it.
years. And this is amazing. And I even got it at a discount pricing, which absolutely beats
The fact
everything that I have
their
as a
return
gadget in
policy
my
is
kitchen.
so easy
It actually
and
beats over
they don't ask any
food
questions.
processor
I
or
can actually
blender or even like
return it
immersion blenders.
and then get my money
This is
back.
a great
It's an easy
product.
process.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Perfect.
How was it for volunteers?
This has been amazing, actually. I could only gather like couple of things. I heard Amazon from Jill and a couple of sentences from Amazon from Joanna, and some I couldn't hear Jill as much, but this was great. Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting because you cannot hear the others. So it's basically blocking you because you're thinking about what you are saying. So the moment I was trying to listen to everybody else, I was feeling that I lost my thought. So I didn't know what to say next. So I was just talking.
Same here.
I didn't want to stop that stream of consciousness to hear what they had to say, because I knew that would interrupt me. So it was just keeping like a constant stream to make sure that I was sort of building the story of what it was that I was trying to tell, and did my best to block everybody else out. I've never done that before, at least consciously.
Yes, absolutely.
And do you call it a conversation?
No,
No.
just me talking.
Yeah, because I mentioned that you may speak at the same time, but you need to have the conversation to talk about your favorite product. But that's fine. It was interesting. I would like to know from others, listeners, what did you listen? And volunteers, please confirm whether they listen the right thing or not. So, other people, you may speak or write on the chat, whatever is comfortable to you.
What kind of thought, it must have been weird as the people, the volunteers, it must be really feel rude that you're just stomping all over the other person. You're not stopping, like, oh, sorry, right? Your normal reaction is, oh, sorry, you were going to say something, go ahead. So it was interesting.
In my case, I just couldn't hear. So it's just a bunch of jarble. So I just tuned out, right? I just wasn't paying attention.
Can any one of you relate this kind of conversation back to your day-to-day work? Have you ever had encountered this kind of situation? Vihor is saying sounds like
absolutely,
watching the
absolutely
presentation.
have, yes.
Yeah.
When everyone's talking, you can't hear anything.
It does feel, someone made the comment that it felt like social media. It does feel like that because it's like the minute you turn it on, it's just like, it's like a fire hose of conversations, of streams, and like where do you turn your attention? What do you focus on? Are you focusing on the right things or the wrong things? It's just sometimes too much.
As Vihar mentioned, it's like watching a political debate where the politicians are over talking each other all the time. You don't hear anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had this experience, just to mention one thing. When I joined a company where I was the only person in a different location than theirs, they had the first conference I attended, they had a meeting where at the beginning, everybody was talking and I was outside. So I was on the call. And because I was on the call, I felt exactly like this, like everybody was just talking and I couldn't zoom in to understand what they were talking. So I felt very awkward. So then I went back and I told them about my experience.
Thank you so much. So I have noticed this kind of situation as well in my work. So suppose you're a product owner and you just gathering some needs of your customers, and you go in a meeting and ask a question, hey, I'm here to understand your problems related to the current product. And they all just start talking at the same time, or two people talk at the same time, others are listening, and you won't be able to understand how people are collaborating. Are you getting the information from all of the people on the call, or some are speaking too much than others? These kind of situations happen when we are working in person as well. But when we are on the Zoom call, it become more difficult how to actually facilitate discussions like that. And being a product managers or product owners, it becomes more difficult because you need to have a little bit of facilitation skills, and you need to know how to listen properly or how to navigate the conversation in a way that you can get most out of this conversation. And believe me, it's because of my experience, I'm saying that if you don't get the most value out of your meeting and you book another meeting and then another meeting, because of having too many online meetings, people are getting more frustrated. So you will get less and less feedback if you keep doing it. Yeah. So this is about listening. So what you can do is that you have to do a reflection, as I was talking about. When you listen something, just take a pause and reflect back. For this, you can use some reflective coaching questions. So suppose you being a product owner facilitating you're in the sprint planning meeting, and you see that so many people are speaking at the same time, asking questions, or nobody is saying anything. Sometimes it happens, they just nod their head. It seems that they understood what you explained to them about the backlog items. So one way is that you could just ask, do you understand what I explained? Then people might say yes, and you move forward. But when the sprinter starts, then there are many questions. It feels like the planning never happened because of not having the good conversation virtually. So instead, being a product owner, what you can do is that you can ask some open-ended question where you can force people to listen properly and think through. So you might ask, you explain one product backlog item, and you might ask what kind of roadblocks you might see that can come along while developing this product backlog item. So that's how you are triggering the thinking in developers so that they can foresee and understand the problem statement properly. So for reflection, these kind of open-ended questions are really powerful. So I have some more examples in the next slide about the reflective coaching questions. You may find a lot on the internet as well. Some examples are, you may ask, at what point did you notice, dot, 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 or describe what happened when, or tell me more about it. So in that way, you are opening up the conversation, navigating the dialogues in a way where people can understand each other and think through and have a meaningful conversation during your meetings. So this is all about listening. And Mark has more tools and techniques to share to improve the observation.
Thanks, Savita. So as Savita mentioned, she's been in scenarios like this. I've been in scenarios like this as well, with both hybrid teams and fully remote teams. The last organization I was in was six years, and we had 150 in our engineering group that was spread from Eastern Europe to Alaska. So these kind of reflective questions worked very well with team members, product owners, product managers. But sometimes you'll find that people are distracted. There's something else going on. And you might be tempted to ask the question, how are you? Are you okay? Are you able to continue in this? And it may not be the right question. You might have to kind of go back and think about, well, what are they dealing with right now? So let me paint a little bit of a picture here. So let's say you're working with a team where over time their performance kind of goes up and down, but it's at a good pace overall, and then a change is introduced. And you might say, well, what is that change? Well, it could be something that they chose, like maybe they took on a new process, like Agile or Safe or Safe Plus Plus or whatever the next one is. Maybe there's a new team member, or maybe in a larger product development, you're adding a whole new team, like in an Agile release train. Or maybe new technologies are introduced, or you're trying to get your products into new markets. There's also those changes we don't choose. So I'm sure maybe once in your career you've had to deal with an urgent request. Maybe once every week. It depends how things go in your business. Or there's an urgent change in direction by the business. Perhaps there's a failure of the technology that you're using, or maybe the process didn't work out. Or as Savita was pointing out in the planning example, there was a misunderstanding and there's confusion on the team. And it could be that one of those key stakeholders you could get that answer from is not available, or the customer's not available. Or some of you might have faced the situation where you get new leadership and all kinds of things change in that case. Or other things might happen. I'm just going to put the yikes in there. We won't, I'm not going to go into what the cause is. But all these things can cause a number of events to happen. What we think is, okay, we'll get through this cloudy period and things will get better. And for many of us, in many cases, that's true, but we don't look at what's behind the clouds. So really what happens is we always get disrupted, no matter if it's a change that we take on intentionally or unintentionally. And what's happening is this change causes some resistance because it's challenging some of our assumptions on how things work. So I think in this last year, a lot of our assumptions about how work should go has been challenged by many of us. Even Savita and I, who've worked remotely for a long time, we have even been challenged in many ways. We've talked about that many times while preparing this. And it gets to a point where you have to let go of some of those assumptions in order to get through what's called this point of chaos. So the sooner you kind of let go of your assumptions, the sooner you can get through this point. This is where you start having what's referred to as transforming ideas. So once you start letting go of some of those assumptions, then you can start exploring some options, some new options. And actually, I just noticed Joanna's comment about multiple languages in the last exercise. Well, this is even this is more difficult when you're dealing with multiple cultures and multiple languages. But it's that idea of we have to try something new. So how do you get that across? And in some cultures, people are more willing to experiment than others. In some organizations, they're more willing to experiment. But the best thing you can do is experiment your way through the challenge. Because this what helps you figure out what is this new way of working. So what is the new way of working fully remote? What is the new way of working hybrid remote, which we might all be facing soon? And then how do we get back to our status quo or a new status quo? So that new status quo, it could put us in the same place. It might be maybe not so great. It might be far better. But the point is, do we know where people are on this curve? So this is where I'm going to ask you all to jump into this poll. Let me just switch out here. So I'll give you this code in chat. Go to menti.com, 952889 is the code you will enter. Or if you have your phone, you can scan that QR code to get in. And when you're in, just hit that heart button, just so I know you're in there. And we've got some couple quick exercises for you here. All right, I see 5 in, 6 in. All right, I'm seeing the heartbeats. That's good. All right, I see 8, 9. All right, give it a few more seconds while people are getting in there. Okay, so remember, we all travel through that change curve. The question is, where are you on that change curve? So for where you are right now, do you still feel like you have some resistance to where things are with your work and where things are going work-wise? Or maybe you've hit the point of some transforming ideas, or maybe your team or your organization has started figuring out how to bring in some of those new ways of working and make it a little bit easier to work. Or maybe you figured out, hey, this is a new way for us to work going forward. So I'd like you to enter 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the poll you are seeing on your devices now. All right, so some are still dealing with resistance. That's okay. Or you feel like your assumptions are challenged. Some are definitely finding those transforming ideas. Some have progressed those, and some have found that new status quo. So in chat, what do you make of this? Why are we getting all these different answers? So give me an answer in the Zoom chat. Why do you think we're all in these different places? And it might be easier than you think. Right? Every organization has its pace on dealing with change. People react differently to adapt. Yes. Teams dynamics. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So Peter was saying he's worked from his home office for years. So that's really the case, is you have these different levels of change, right, in different organizations. So as an individual, as a team, and as an organization, we all react differently. So when you see an individual struggling, or maybe you're a product owner working with a team and you see that team struggling, rather than asking, how are you, you might want to draw out that curve and say, maybe, where are you on this curve? Where are you right now? Are you wrestling with some big changes and don't know what to do? Or are you starting to get some ideas, and do we need to put something in the backlog for you to explore those ideas? In some older terminology, they would call that spiking, putting spikes in the backlog to do some quick experiments. Or maybe you've progressed that and now it's time to flush out some ideas and really integrate them. Or you've got a new way of working, you've got that new status quo. But let's see where we think we might be. So think out, say, 6 months from now. Do you feel things will be just okay? Do you think things will be a bit better? Or do you see that things will be much better? So go ahead and put your answers in for these. 1, 2, or 3. Just okay, a bit better, or seem much better? Okay. Again, our outlook is mixed as well. So our outlook might determine how we choose to move forward. It might determine individually what risk we're willing to take. As a team, what risks we're willing to take. So when you're in that product owner role, or maybe some of you are working with scrum masters or coaches, we might all be in these different places. So you might want to explore that too, that last part of the curve with them, and say, where do you think we're going to be? And maybe step back from that and talk about what other ideas can we explore to get us in a better place. So that's another thing to explore as you're working with your teams. All right. And let me hand it back to Savita. Let me get the slides flipped over here. All right, there you are.
So we just understood that different people adapt to change differently. They take their own time. They are trying different techniques or ideas to incorporate this new change. So when we are all working remotely, and now we understand that people are in different zones of this curve change, what we can do is that we can have more careful observation instead of just observation. So what I mean by that, on the left you can see there is an observation process which is just to sense what is happening around you, means during the calls or meetings or working remotely. And based on your own knowledge or understanding or your own biases comes into play, then you perceive about what is happening. And then you start thinking what has just happened during the conversation. This is just observation. Even if you pay your attentive attention or focus during the conversation, but if you put your thinking into place, you might get the situation differently what really has happened. So instead, what you can do is that you can move to the right, which is more careful observation. Careful observation says that you have to suspend your thinking. Don't think what is happening right now. So what you can do is that you can take some notes about the event, pay full attention, notice as many signals as you can, and suspend your thinking for the later. Okay, so while doing this thing, what you want to take a note of, or while taking the full attention, what kind of signals you might want to look into, I have here a simple tool which is called the observation log. And I have been using it for quite some time, and it's really helping me in my day-to-day work. And it becomes very handy for all the different kind of roles you are playing in an agile team. So what you want to do is that you may create this simple table in your notebook or on your uh, Word document, and it has some columns. You may actually customize it as per your need. I am just sharing the version that I use personally. So the first column here, it says to note down the date of the meeting or discussion. Because you are keeping your thinking for the later stage, so you might want to take a note of the date so that when you are doing some insightful thinking, critical thinking about the situation, you might actually refer back to what kind of conversation it was for which you took the note. Then the second thing is about the behavior. So during the conversation, what were the different behaviors did you notice about other people? What were their energy levels, about how they were collaborating during the discussion? Were they open or not? Whatever is stand out for you, you may take a note here. And then the third item is about uh, all the participants' action or reaction. Means, suppose you share something and a few people became defensive, few people behave like welcoming. So, whatever reaction you observe, you may write here. And then about insight about the discussion. So, I can give you one example. Sometimes it happens is that you notice a very loud voice of someone during the conversation. And you may think that the person was really angry because of what you shared. But it might happen that person was not angry. It just that the system setting were different than yours. And you heard that person voice very loud. So instead of using your thinking that the person was angry, you just write that, okay, I heard louder voice, and you keep it for later. So once you do it for few meetings, you will start finding out some patterns. And because of these patterns, you can understand better about the behavior of people who you are interacting with in a regular basis. Okay, so why this is important? Because as I mentioned earlier, we are all sharing different work environment. So few behaviors could be like only once in a while happen, because you don't know, in someone else's home they got a food delivery, or the kid was playing around, or fire alarm just turned on. You don't know what is happening in other people's work environment. So, writing out the patterns, you may differentiate what happened only once or what keeps on happening again and again. And based on these patterns, you may create an action plan. You may say that, hey, you know what? Whenever I do the demo of the product, this one stakeholder never says anything, and his facial expression is like he is not happy with the product. So, what you can do, your action plan could be, hey, I want to have a one on one with this stakeholder. And let's try to give more attention to that person and capture the feedback properly. Okay. So, you can come up with some action plan and work on that. It is really helpful not to interrupt people, and based on your observation, reflect back everything during the discussion. You may do few things later. And why I'm saying this, because I know whenever people start improving their listening skills or observation skills, and they know that they have to reflect back during the meeting, they start reflecting back, and sometimes it becomes so disruptive that you are not allowing the conversation to go smoothly. So instead, you can just take the notes and keep your thinking aside, come up with the action plan, and talk about some of the observations later outside of the meeting. Okay. So this is the tool, which is really easy to use. It will take some time to get into practice because it's an extra work you might be doing during your meeting, but it's really helpful. So these were the 3 techniques which we wanted to share today in today's webinar. We are here open for some questions. You may ask by turn on your audio, or you can write your questions on the Zoom chat.
This is great. I really like the log. I think it makes you also organize your thoughts during the session as well. So instead of just jumping to conclusion, you can actually assess the information, process it, think about it later, and so on. So I'm sure there are questions here. I see Jill enabled her video. Do you have a question? I know your your patterns.
So one of the things that I have observed from sort of like the beginning of the pandemic to where we are now, and I find myself doing the same behavior, which is camera off more frequently than it used to be. That I think when I first moved to everything online, I needed that visual connection with people and the auditory. But then, I would find that lots of people were going camera off, and there's now studies saying that it's actually part of the brain exhaustion. So in a world where more people are going camera off, and I'm having sessions with clients, I've had to kind of make friends with the silence, because I can't read any facial recognition. Either they're looking at the camera because they're listening to me, or maybe they're taking notes or working on something else. So I'm really having to listen harder to pick up on the non-visual cues that they may be sending out or not. And when you ask for feedback, you ask for someone to answer, be comfortable with that silence until someone then has the courage to speak up. I'm not sure if other people are feeling that, or if there's any other techniques that you could use besides that log in meetings.
So Savita, I'll jump in here if you don't mind. So notice my background. So sometimes what you have in the background can make a difference. If I actually show what's behind this background, it's a very busy office, because this is my wife's stuff back here. There's a lot of visual noise. But if you can have a simple background, so Jill, yours is fine, or sometimes even using one of these virtual backgrounds, and some like them, some don't. That's okay. But having some kind of pictures in the background that make it visually interesting. For me, I like nature scenes because that tends to be calming for most people. Or sometimes if it's a team I'm working with closely, I might change the background to tell a story. So for instance, I live in Orlando and I can go in my backyard and watch these Falcon 9 launches right out of my backyard. They're really spectacular at night. So see, I saw the reaction on your face just there because you had video on. So sometimes by having interesting things in your background, but not a lot of noise, it can help the visual part of the conversation. But at the same time, I never force anybody to turn a camera on. The Zoom fatigue is real. I get Zoom fatigued. If I get more in about 4 or 5 meetings, and I have about 6 today, this is one of 6. So I'm purposely taking a break after this. I have about an hour break. I'm stepping away from the screen and not being in front of the screen for a while. And that's another thing I would highly encourage. So try not to schedule things back to back because that just adds to the exhaustion. So Savita, I didn't know if you had anything else you wanted to add.
So I would like to add, which will also answer Vihor's question about how to encourage your virtual team members to feel comfortable showing on camera on a daily basis. So first thing, like Mark said, I don't tell people to always be on camera. I just remind them if you are comfortable, you can keep your camera on. But the other thing which I do with my teams or my group of people with whom I actually interact in a daily basis, we create working agreement. It's a very simple technique. Most of the agile teams do it. You might want to revisit it and talk about when do you want to have your camera on, or when do you want to have the meetings and when not. So I facilitated some of the working agreement sessions when COVID hit because of the change in the work environment. It was the right time to revisit the working agreements. So what happened? Some of the people shared that uh, after lunch, we don't want to have any meetings. Just have all the meetings before lunch, and after that, we just want to focus and do our work. Or some people just come up with a few slots in between. Hey, this time I have my kids' school class, and I really don't want to have the meeting. Or during this time slot, I will never come on camera. I will just join over the phone. So, whatever it is, you just create a platform and talk to your team or to your stakeholders, whatever makes sense to do it. I also remember in one of my session, there was someone who talked about, yeah, so I have my few meetings with some leaders on a regular basis, and we just discussed that it's okay sometimes to just get a call over the phone, and while taking a walk in the garden, I will just attend and have a conversation so that during that time I don't have to look to the screen. So they're very simple techniques which really help the team in day-to-day basis. But you know what? I would like to hear from other participants if you are trying something new or different you would like to share with others.
I think there was another question from Vihor, I think in the same topic, how to encourage your virtual team members to feel comfortable showing on camera. And I know it's hard to do that without making it mandatory, and mandatory doesn't work either. So I've seen teams imposing that mandatory camera on, and people still say, no, we're not comfortable, and they still not doing it if they don't commit to it.
Yeah. So So Indira was yeah, yeah. Gurpreet says no meeting days. Sometimes yes, that can work. Uh, but I find what is helpful, and this depends on the team, is building connections. So sometimes when I'm first working with a team, I like to get to know the team. So I'll meet with them one-on-one, ask them, what is it they enjoy about the work, what's challenging, things like that. But I also try to get to know a little bit about them. And sometimes, so Indira was commenting about the cool green screen. You don't need a cool green screen. You can just say, hey, do you have anything around your desk that's interesting and not work related? And I'll go, well, maybe I do. There's some things that I really enjoy. I'm an old school Star Trek fan. So, just having interesting things visually to talk about. And sometimes, so I've even worked with teams that will absolutely never turn on their camera, and you still have to build that connection. I worked really hard with one team, and I finally decided, okay, I got to try something. So I tried ending every meeting, including daily stand-ups. So this took lots of effort and brainstorming, but I tried to end every meeting differently. So sometimes it was that's all, folks, and things like that. And then one day, after trying various different movie quotes and TV quotes, I used the phrase, and on that bombshell, the quietest guy on the team immediately reached out to me in chat after that stand-up and goes, is that from Top Gear UK? I love that. And we were on a 30-minute chat conversation afterwards. He had never really connected with anybody like that. After that point, he started to open up a little bit more. Didn't turn on his camera, but he would be a little bit more relaxed. He would keep mute off. He would speak more openly. So it's not so much about the camera, it's how free are people to speak. And some might turn on the camera at times, and if they don't, they don't. But how can they speak freely, I think is the more important thing. Savita, you might have a different take on
No,
that.
I just have one example to share. It happened with one of my teams. They were not comfortable coming up with camera because of someone was saying, I have a bad hair day. Okay, I'm just wearing my comfortable home clothes. There could be multiple reasons because we are at home, we can understand. So what happens is that we just booked a game lunch. So we just play the game together and we share that, okay, we are not having any professional or work related conversation. It's just a game evening or game lunch, and you can turn your camera on. We are not looking at you, just playing game together. And people showed up because it was informal setting. So that's how you can make people comfortable. Or you can just book some virtual coffee chat with few people, have one-on-one video discussion. And when more people have this kind of video discussions with one or two people, they slowly become comfortable with more people. So these
Right.
are the few things that I use.
I find the same. So thank you so much. We are at the top of the hour, and I definitely thank you for all these insights and the examples and everything. And everyone here, if you have more questions for Mark and Savita, please reach out to them. They are sharing their LinkedIn, so don't be strangers. Invite them, pester them, ask them questions. I'm sure they will be happy to respond. So thank you again for accepting the invitation. This has been a very insightful session. We do appreciate it, and it's a great start of the year. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So Peter, we have a couple of things to announce before we go away. So our next webinar will be focused on marketing, because we know that relationship between product development and product management and marketing needs to be there. So we invited Mark Evans, who's a book author as well, to talk about branding and marketing in product development and how important that is. So we are scheduling that for February 19th, and we hope to see you there. So we're changing a little bit the topic, but it's still about product development and product management. You are on mute, Peter.
Yes, of course I'm on mute. The other problem, right? The virtual meetings, you're on mute. Yes, thank you, Mark and Savita. It was a very interesting discussion. So besides Mark, we have 3 webinars planned for March. We have Amin talking about product owner tools, focusing on Smartsheet and Monday.com. Later that week, we've got very happy to have Ricardo Vargas, who was heading up PMI's initiative around Brightline and business transformation, to talk about business transformation. He too is going through a bit of a change of career, so we'll talk a little bit about that, about conversations that really matter. And then at the end of the month, we'll have Trish Lynch come and talk about OKR, so objectives and key results, a tool that's being increasingly used by organizations, including by product managers and product owners, about how to make their products successful. So a busy couple of months coming up with 4 webinars, all very exciting to have these people join us and to have you to participate and ask your questions and comments around them.
And then the other thing we wanted to talk about is our upcoming course on product owners with University of Toronto. This is a great partnership that we have with them. It's a course that starts at the beginning of March, and it goes for 6 half days from 9 a.m. to 12:30. And it's going to be a course that is very applied, a lot of examples, a lot of exercises on how to actually do the work and do the job of a product owner. So this is the link where you can register. And with the course, you get a copy of our book, GenP, a new generation of product owners who care about customers. So that's part of the course there.
So again, thank you very much for attending this webinar. As I mentioned in the beginning, this has been recorded. It will be posted up on our website later on today or tomorrow morning. You'll get an email when it's posted. Please feel free to share the links. I also will note on our website, newgenp.com, we have the registrations for the upcoming webinars. Also available for you to go register for them, and we'll be sending out notes as well to remind you. So thank you very much for joining. If you want to have a virtual coffee with us to discuss your questions, just email us at info@newgenp.com. Have a great rest of your week, and we look forward to seeing you with Mark Evans on February 19th. Thank you.
Thank you.